Couldn't sing or dance.
But wanted to entertain.
You can tell I've been asked that before.
Yeah, I
couldn't answer. No, actually, it came about like this. As a kid, I loved wrestling. I grew up watching the Crusher up in Minnesota, Vern Gagne and all them. And when I got out of the Navy, I had thoughts of playing pro football because I had changed my body. My last year in the Navy, I started pumping iron. I was up to 230 pounds then. And so I went to junior college for 1 year, and I was on the GI Bill. And so when you're on the GI Bill and you don't really know what you want to do, you kind of take anything, you don't have to name a major or nothing. And I only spent 1 year at junior college, but I got very enthusiastic on theater in college. In fact, I actually did Aristophanes' The Birds, the play, a Greek comedy in college. And that always raises eyebrows too from people. And then I saw a thing where and I thought, wait a minute. Pro wrestling, I wanted to be an athlete. Pro wrestling combines both athleticism with theater. It's physical theater. And I thought, what could be more perfect? I mean, you get to be a personality. You get to communicate. I mean, pro football players, and that all you see is their number and a name on the back of their jersey. With wrestling, you have the theatrics of wrestling as well as the tremendous physical. People don't give the wrestlers the credit they deserve. You know what I refer to wrestling as? Ballet with violence.
And that's absolutely what it is.
Ballet with violence, because you have to. I remember, I can't describe to you the feeling when, and it only happened to me once, when Macho Man jumps off the top rope and hits you with that elbow. Bear in mind,
you took an elbow from Macho Man once?
Once, because we were tag team and it was the way they beat us. The guy rolled out of the way and Macho.
Were you already doing comic? Was this later? Did you get a little surprise match?
Could have been. Yeah, it was at Long Island.
Oh, Nassau Coliseum.
Nassau Coliseum.
Great wrestling venue.
Yeah. And but I realized as I was lying there watching Macho sail down on me from this height that looked like the Empire State Building, and you've got to kind of lift up to catch him a little, to break the fall for him a little, And but I realized that if he's off by 1 inch, he could kill me. And imagine that. And this is live. When you do it, you can't take it back. This is like doing live theater. It ain't like the movies. The movies, you can do 8 takes and they'll print the ones they want. This is live theater. Once you say the lines, they're gone. And wrestling's the same way. Once the move is underway, you can't stop it. But I thought if Randy misses by a little bit, he could kill me. I'm dead.
Speaking of which, you, of course, did commentary on that match, arguably the greatest wrestling match of all time, with him and Steamboat.
Yeah. To me, it is.
Really? Would you say it's your favorite?
No, it was the greatest match I ever saw, ever. It was the most, first of all, it was in the biggest venue in history, the Silverdome, where we broke the Rolling Stones record.
93,000.
93,000 people. And that, of course, it was Hogan and Andre. It was the big draw, of course, but the Macho Man Steamboat match is the greatest match that I've ever witnessed.
You were a big part of Macho Man's heat, by the way. I mean, you were so good.
That was my job.
So give me the number one rule that you would say for being a heel commentator.
Well, the number one rule was actually what Vince McMahon told me the first day he put me there. And Vince, because I had been hurt. Remember, I had the blood clots in my lungs, and it kind of knocked me out for 6 months. I did subsequently come back, but then I retired about a year later. But in between, Vince came to me with that idea, and he said, I have an idea. He said, I want to have the first heel announcer. It's never been done before. He said, you think you could do it? I said, of course I can do it.
Bad
guy. Babyface is a good guy.
Babyface is a good guy, heel bad guy.
Thank you. No, I know it's a bad guy, but what do you mean a bad guy announcer?
Announcer that sides with the bad guy.
The announcer basically he aligns with the bad guys also. Yeah, usually before that they don't.
In wrestling before they're always against the bad guys. And now all of a sudden here's an announcer telling them how much ability it takes to pull someone's hair and hide it from the ref.
Right.
Brilliant.
Ignoring all the bad stuff.
Did you see him hide that from the referee? The referee didn't see a thing.
Or calling out, Jesse, always calling out Hogan for all the little dirty things Hogan would do.
Oh, yeah.
But it's a really important role because for all the people watching at home, it helps tell the viewer what's bad and what's good.
Put it this way: when I went to court against McMahon, he tried to downplay the announcer's role, and Vern Gagne testified for me in that. And Vern Gagne, the easy way to equate it, Vern Gagne told the jury Jesse Ventura is to wrestling what John Madden is to football. Because at the time John Madden was doing Monday Night Football, and we all know how popular Madden was
Of course.
on Monday Night Football. He said that's the equivalent. Jesse Ventura is the John Madden of pro football.
So when you're watching TV, watch out when you hear.
All you hear is them. All you hear
There
is
was another good guy there.
Gorilla Monsoon was his
Or
best.
Vince.
Or Vince.
Or Vince.
Now, Vince didn't bring the same sort of character that Gorilla did.
No.
How good was Gorilla?
Gorilla was great. I love Gino. He was a terrific guy. And me and Vince worked very good together, you know. But here, getting back to what you said, here's what Vince told me. He said, here's the attitude I want you to have. If you believe it, it's true. And I went, oh, this is great. In other words, carte blanche. Say any damn thing you want, because if you believe it, it's true. That way I can even say the opposite of what happened in the ring.
And then you would.
Yeah.
Regularly, he'll tell you what you just saw didn't happen
Yeah,
with conviction. And is that the number one thing for heel, though? Everything a heel does is right. They always believe they're right. The heel was always right.
Well,
it doesn't realize that they're
And it's the old cliche. It ain't how you play the game, it's whether you win or lose.
always.
You know, it ain't how you play the game.
But you got to watch.
Win.
You said, and by the way, you used to say some classic. You and Heenan would say some classic insults about whoever it would be, your Tito Santana's, whatever your mid-card kind of good guys.
You mean Chico?
Chico. Only calling him Chico Santana. Little funny, just barbs on nonstop. But man, it was.
Well, I'll tell you the line that I remember most, and in fact, Bill Murray sent a message saying it was the greatest ad-lib line he'd ever heard in his life.
I can't wait to hear this.
If you recall, do you remember the wedding of Uncle Elmer?
No, I don't. Of course I do.
At the Meadowlands?
Of course.
Well, Vince came up to me before that, and he said, all he did was walk up and he said, Jesse, bury them. Bury them. I looked at Vince and says, okay. So when they got to that passionate moment, right, they've said the vows and it's kiss the bride. Here's what I said. I said, oh my God. I said, it looks like two carp in the middle of the Mississippi River going after the same piece of corn. You know, this tender kiss. And now you equate it to two carp fish, ugly carp. And there's a, you know, because we fished for carp as a kid in the Mississippi. Well, one of the things you put is corn on the hook and you bottom fish for them. And they love to eat corn. You know, just get a can of corn and go down fishing at the river and you'll catch carp all day on the Mississippi River. And but I said, it looks like two carp going after the same piece of corn in the Mississippi River. And Bill Murray sent word through Dick Ebersol. He said, I fell on the floor. It was the greatest ad-lib line I'd ever heard.
Because that was the Saturday Night's Main Event. Right?
Yeah, and then remember somebody threw the pint and it hit the bride in the head?
And starting
And what did I say? I said, look, I told you this wedding shouldn't happen. There's a sign from the heavens. And somebody winged an empty pint and hit the bride in the head with it.
And since
She
then,
almost
we've known the history of weddings in wrestling. Never a good ending.
Well, but I will say this, that was real. That was a real wedding.
No.
Yes, the New Jersey State Athletic Commission would not allow a hoax. The wedding was real.
So they had to have an actual wedding.
They had
Uncle
to-
Elmer's wedding.
Because at that time, Vince hadn't been able to separate from the boxing wrestling
Right. He hadn't gotten out of that
commissions.
yet.
He hadn't gotten out of it, and the New Jersey Athletic Commission would not allow it to be a farce. So the wedding was actually real. She really married him.
How often in those? How often?
Who's this? Who married this?
Uncle Elmer, this big fat kind of farmer guy. you
Yeah,
know,
character wrestler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They called him Uncle Elmer, and he married his girlfriend.
Oh.
And
It was really his girlfriend?
Yeah, it was, because the wedding was real.
Oh.
Oh yeah,
In
and she was this little tiny thing, you know, the typical opposites. You know, she's this little tiny thing, he's this big fat, gross-looking guy.
Into the 80s, though, how much was it?
Well, we gotta get back to the book.
Oh, I know. Last one.
Okay,
Last one. How much do you actually get heat in real life?
From what?
From people hating you as a heel in the 80s? Like, were people like at the airport or just being out?
Well,
What a
it
geek.
was worse before Vince. It was worse in the territory days.
Okay, that's what I was
The territory days, because by the time we went national, we were now more mega stars. It was more that
No offense, man.
the
Kayfabe.
territory days of early wrestling. That's why bad guys don't use their real names, because that's how dangerous it is. I have people pull knives on me.
Yeah, did you ever have to fight your way out of an arena or anything like
Not
that?
out of it, but the worst thing I ever had was in Eugene, Oregon. I had my match, right? And the cops were bringing me back to the dressing room. And a fight broke out at ringside. So I turned to the cops and I made the mistake. I said, "I'm okay, go ahead." So the cops all ran back to the ring to, because this fight broke out, and I still had to go a little farther to the dressing room. It was behind the stands. All of a sudden, this kid comes from behind the stands and says a few, I can't say the words on the air to me, and basically says, "I'm going to kill you." He reaches out and pulls out a big hunting knife, and he's coming at me.
What?
And I could read it in my eyes.
Why? Because you were a
This
bad
kid's
guy in
strong,
wrestling?
Because this kid's, because that's how emotional the fans would get.
What?
And this kid's going to attempt to kill me now. I was fortunate that all of a sudden this guy jumped out of the bleachers behind this kid, grabbed him, spun him around, and had him cuffed in an instant. There was a plainclothes cop watching the match and happened to look down and saw this kid coming at me with the blade. And he jumped out of the stands and he was marvelous. Spun this kid around, and guess what? They couldn't do a thing to him. The kid was underage.
Wow.
So all they could do is refer it to juvenile court.
So then Vince hired him. And the cop.
And that's probably well, do you remember who is it got stabbed in the ring? Mulligan.
Yeah.
Remember when Jack Mulligan got stabbed? Well, I'll tell you how bad it was, and then we gotta go back to the book. Boston, you know how bad it was?
I know it was bad in Boston.
They used to have to put the plexiglass around the ring, like hockey.
They
People had to watch the match through plexiglass.
because too much stuff was
So
done.
too much stuff would get thrown. And so for the safety of
Those
us,
guys in Boston are so civilized.
So rational. I know, God forbid you were a junkyard dog in Boston. I can only imagine. Unfortunately, he was a babyface.
but oh yeah, that's how bad it was in Boston. They used to have to put plexiglass around the ring, so you'd have to watch the match through the plexiglass like a hockey game.
Oh my God.